This video will contain spoilers for the entire Devil May Cry franchise. I practically grew up with Devil May Cry, but in a strange order. I watched a YouTube series called The Stupid Files as a kid, and I loved the aesthetic of the games. That motivated me to watch the cutscenes for 4, since it was the latest entry at the time. The first game I actually played was the Ninja Theory reboot, but I went in knowing it wasn't the same. Plus, I was disappointed that they didn't follow through on the tone of the reveal trailer. On its own, the reboot was a solid game, but I had seen what the mainline entries really had to offer, at least in videos. So I waited, and when I got the chance, I bought the HD collection, and it was amazing. I truly believe Devil May Cry 3 is one of the best video games of all time, especially because it's one of the best examples of ludonarrative dissonance. It combines its gameplay with its story very well, so you don't run into the same problem as Uncharted, where Nate has the blood of 1,000 men on his hands. I was familiar enough with the franchise to wait for DMC5. I waited years, and then I bought it as soon as it came out. I loved 5, though I will say, I thought the realistic art style took away some of the original, more cartoony style that it had before. They still brought Bingo Morihashi on for the story, so it fit in well with the rest of the franchise. I loved it, and really felt nostalgic for DMC3's Virtual Battle 1 when we fought him in the duel in 5. Anyways, before I get into the show, I want to set something straight. For those who say it's non-canon and stuff, I know. I knew to go into it with fresh eyes. But I also expected it to at least get the core of DMC correct, which it did not. Devil May Cry is sincere. It is not irony poisoned. The games always end with something emotional, and then they fully lean into it. Look at the epilogue of 3.
Wanna know the name? Devil May Cry.
That lives rent-free in my head, because it's one of the most satisfying conclusions to any game. Uncharted 4 is definitely up there, by the way. I love Uncharted. Devil May Cry is a family soap opera. The main theme is that devils are inherently evil. Devils never cry because they have no humanity. They have no concept of empathy. Sparta is the one pure devil who did.
But somebody from the underworld woke up to justice and stood up against this legion alone. His name was Sparta.
Nero lays out the themes of the entire franchise himself in a rant in 4. All the characters tell you these themes blatantly towards the end of every single game.
I didn't cry when my asshole daddy died. But... yeah, I know. I wouldn't be here without him, that's a biological fact.
Right.
All I'm saying is, tough guy, it's okay to cry if you want.
I'm not crying.
Devils cry!
I'm not gonna
Kittens
cry. Will you
Meow!
shut up? Will you
Puppies
stop?
cry.
But I do know that Sparta had a heart. A heart that could love another person. A human. And that is what you lack.
I see. Maybe somewhere out there, even a devil may cry when he loses a loved one. Don't you think?
Trish, devils never cry. These tears are a gift only humans have.
Having empathy and having a heart is at the core of every game. Virgil sacrifices himself to basically give Dante a chance to leave in 3. Dante follows Virgil into literal hell in 5. Nero's entire quest in 4 is to save his girlfriend. In 5 it becomes stopping his family from tearing itself apart. The key theme of Devil May Cry is that it fully embraces love. Killing demons and stuff is the game, but the story, the themes, the message are all what make the franchise beautiful and poignant. I've talked about DMC overall. Now I'm going to talk about Dante and Lady, who seem to be the central characters in this show. First, let's talk about Dante. Dante, in my opinion, is both the wacky woohoo pizza man and an introspective, quiet person. He genuinely has fun fighting demons, but he also feels lonely without his family. The wacky personality is not entirely a cover. Like in 4, when he's at his wackiest, it's like he knows he can handle the whole situation easily, but he wants to guide Nero and see what he can do. In 1 and 5, when he's at his most serious, it's when he has to take his threats just as seriously. In 1, Mundus coming back threatens the entire world, and it's about preserving his father's legacy and following his footsteps. In 5, Urizen is Virgil. In Visions of V, for example, even hearing his brother's name pisses him off. Plus, maybe it's just how it's presented, but Urizen felt like the greatest threat in the franchise to me. Speaking of 5, that is all about legacy. The main theme song is called Legacy, and it's about the Sparta family breaking their status quos. Dante merges rebellion and Sparta into Devil's Sword Dante, moving out of his father's shadow. Virgil, by eating the Qliphothr fruit, finally gets all that power he wanted throughout the franchise. The two brothers literally follow each other into hell and stick together. They are no longer separated, and Nero is now the main protector of Earth. Elements of 5 should absolutely not be part of a young Dante story. And speaking of young Dante, the Netflix version of him isn't even as competent as the other young Dante from 3. The one fight scene that wouldn't look out of place in the games was this mercenary fight. Humans should be no challenge to Dante or any of the Sparta children. Most demons should be a joke. He and Virgil are the sons of Sparta. They have fun because they can. They are the sons of Sparta, the sons of the one guy powerful enough to defeat Mundus, wield Sparta, Rebellion, and Yamato together and seal the human and demon worlds off from each other. Sparta was absurdly strong. We know that much about him. Speaking of Sparta, why wasn't he present for his family in the show? Yes, he disappears in the games. He disappears in all renditions of the story, but not before handing his swords down and at least hanging out with his family a little bit. We don't know much about him, and I'm glad we don't. But we do know he was there for his family because there are family portraits with everyone in them in the games, in multiple games. When it comes to show Dante, they nerf him only for the sake of the plot. He's on par with his game counterpart in some scenes, but in others, he's just a normal guy. Lady should not be able to touch Dante at all, no matter the tech she has. She shoots him in the leg in the show, captures him a bunch of times, and even steals his amulet, which is an absolute disgrace. Dante should know about his heirlooms, he should know about his family history. Even the reboot got that right. A core part of his character is struggling with accepting his demonic heritage. The reason that the Sparta kids should be untouchable to humans is because it's a big deal for people with his powers to use them for good, for justice. Virgil uses them for personal gain, and look at what happens. He causes disasters every single time. I'll cite 5 because the tree destroying Redgrave City was entirely Virgil's fault. The apartment fight almost convinced me that at least Dante would be okay, but then he made a "your mom" joke. Dante probably wouldn't say something like that because of how much he reveres his own mother and what she left him.
Dante!
Don't come any closer, you devil! You may look like my mother, but you're nowhere close to her. You have no soul. You have the face, but you'll never have her fire!
It probably fits Nero better, who, funny enough, Johnny Young Bosch voices in the games. This version of Dante is a strange mix of those characters. Plus, Dante is not stupid. That's a fan persona invented for him. It feels like he's more perceptive than he lets on, especially in 4, where, ironically, he's also at his wackiest. He's indirectly guiding Nero into becoming someone who can save the world.
Well, if the kid screws up, then I'll just have to kick his ass.
Remember, he only lets Nero keep the Yamato for his own purposes after Nero calms down and proves he won't do anything stupid.
Now that you're calm and cool, get going.
Once Dante watches Nero save the world, he lets him keep the Yamato forever. If 5 was never written, and we never knew if Nero was related to Dante, the moment would still hit. The Yamato stays in the family because by braving all these challenges and doing good, Nero would be welcomed into the family anyways.
Thought this meant a lot to you. That's the only kind of gift worth giving. I want to entrust it to you, so I am. What you do from here is your call.
It's crazy looking back on it, how this was the last thing we ever saw of the original Dante for around a decade. Now let's talk about Lady. The woman in the Netflix show is not Lady. She is Lieutenant Mary Arkham, a woman written by Vivzy Pop. She swears to the point where listening to her caused me actual revulsion. Just look at how she explains the Legend of Sparta in the games compared to the show.
You've heard of it, haven't you? The Legend of Sparta? When I was young, my father would tell me stories about it. Long ago, in ancient times, a demon rebelled against his own kind for the sake of the human race.
There are two main reasons why she's so abrasive towards Dante in 3. One is because he's simply in her way, and she has tunnel vision, only wanting to kill her father, Arkham. 2 is because she hates all demons, and she is right to do so, because in Devil May Cry, demons are evil monsters. Sparta was an exception to that. I want to reinforce this. He became an in-universe legend because it was so unthinkable for a demon to develop empathy. As for the swearing, Devil May Cry was developed under the idea that there could be a cool character who didn't smoke or swear. That was the original vision behind Dante, that Kamiya had. Lady doesn't really swear in the games, and if she ever did, at some point, watching the show wiped my memory of it. She curses an absurd amount. It's their sad attempt to make her look tough, when in the games, she lets her actions speak for her. One of her coolest moments in 3 is when she says simply 2 words.
Whoa! Try.
Plus, let's go back to the idea of her keeping up with Dante. She is a boss fight in 3, but it's obvious how different it is compared to the demons. She's the easiest boss in the game. Dante makes a point to her that even though it's a family matter for her, it all started with his. He tells her to hang back because the events to follow, towards the end of 3, are no place for a human. He takes up her burden for her. All they had to do was take out the swearing, and really a lot of my issues with Show Lady would have been fixed. Another thing is that Mary Arkham in the show is not Lady. Lady would never take on Arkham's name. She named the Kalina Ann, her rocket launcher, after her mother. I always assumed her full name would be Mary Ann, since she even throws away the name Mary since Arkham keeps calling her by it in an attempt to manipulate her. Mary Arkham is a totally different character from Lady, so much so that I really didn't get mad watching her, because Lady just wasn't in the Netflix show. By the way, this character design sucks. I don't care what it's a reference to, whether it's Oni or Captain Commando, this is not Lady. It's very simple. Dante's signature color is red, Virgil's is blue, Lady's is white. By changing her so drastically, it felt like she wasn't even in the show. Even worse, she uses the Kalina Ann in only one episode of the show, despite the fact that she carries it around in a box for multiple episodes. If Adi Shankar said he understood the themes and was a huge fan, he either lied or he didn't understand what it was really trying to say. Maybe he liked the reboot more, who knows. You want to adapt Devil May Cry, right? You want it to be non-canon, effectively fanfiction. Fine. Taking the characters you love and putting them in a new setting, that's fine, it could be interesting. But you don't get the characters. You didn't really do anything with them because you did not write those characters. Even giving them different backstories would be acceptable if they kept the cores of who they were, but you threw those away too. I want to say something to the Castlevania fans. I don't really know much about Castlevania beyond seeing Lords of Shadow 2 in a GameStop once. The only other thing I know about it is from the Die Monster You Don't Belong in This World thing. But as a show, seasons 1 and 2 were good. It felt like they might have been closer to the games than anything after that. But I could see where the writing fell off as a show on its own. Nocturne was even worse. I can't imagine what that was like for Richter fans. Let's talk about that, by the way. Let's talk about Adi Shankar's bootleg universe Devil May Cry. I've told you why it didn't deserve the title. Now, I'll tell you why it is a bad show. First major issue is the pacing. The writers shoved as much as they could into 8 episodes. Too much was going on all at once. Dante discovering his inner nature could have been its own thing, but then they shoved the devil trigger into it. The whole Makai bullshit, which doesn't exist in the games because it is literally hell, the underworld, is another thing that bloats the show. Mary and the rabbit share an entire silent episode that plays with different animation styles to show their backstories. This could actually have been spread out over multiple episodes to basically open up an entire episode slot for more of the main story. I've already talked about the inconsistencies in the fight scenes, establishing Dante's abilities, then letting Lady single-handedly remove him from the plot. Even if you treat it as its own thing, it still does too much too fast. You have no time to get attached to these characters, and it's not easy to, even if you want to. Dante has no real emotional moments. Lady doesn't either, despite the flashbacks. They're not done well. We don't see her interact with the rest of her squad that much, so there's no chemistry there. We don't know much about these characters' real personalities because they are surface-level renditions of their game selves. They just weren't fleshed out enough. The White Rabbit is basically the main character of this show. I know people have said that Lady sidelines Dante for the entire show, and yes, she does, but it still feels like the rabbit sidelines her. Maybe it's because I didn't really care about what was happening to her. Her squad had no chemistry between themselves, so when they died, I felt nothing. Objectively speaking, these characters were all written badly. Plus, they blatantly tell you Dante's backstory. He doesn't get a flashback of his own showing what happened to him. We get one flashback of him and his mother, and then another of him and Virgil arguing as kids. But nothing about how his house was attacked by demons, which is the most character-defining thing for Dante. You get Enzo from Bayonetta, who is here as another cheap Easter egg, literally telling another character what happened in 1 or 2 sentences. That is just awful writing. Another example of bad writing is a different conversation between Dante and Enzo. Dante says something like, "I'll take any job, but nothing that makes me care." That's not good writing. Show, don't tell is a simple rule that these guys failed to follow. Now, the action scenes were mid. The fight in Dante's apartment was the best one, probably because it borrowed a lot of elements from DMC3's opening, most obviously the billiards thing. Here's another thing. Don't tell me the show is about Dante at his weakest. Dante at his weakest has shrugged off headshots, been stabbed multiple times, caught bullets with his teeth, dodged rockets, and other stuff. This is all pre-awakening, by the way. Humans are nothing to Dante. All of them, no matter how strong. Remember that in 3, canonically, the Lady boss fight ends with him only wearing her down, making her run out of ammo, and give up. He doesn't actually really hurt her. He simply convinces her to let him help. Over and over, the idea that these characters are willing to help each other comes up in the games. That is how they ultimately win. I'm citing 3 mostly because it's my favorite, it's the best, and it features all these characters. Don't forget that at the end of the game, even Virgil comes around in his own way. He actually saves Dante from being trapped in the demon world, and guarantees that he can't be saved last minute. Oh, and here's another thing. You know Ebony and Ivory, Dante's iconic twin pistols? They never show up in the show. It's just twin Berettas that keep breaking. Which could be interesting, but here's the problem. Dante doesn't call himself Tony Redgrave. If Uddy really wanted to prove he was a super fan, the public and Darkholm would only refer to him as Tony Redgrave. He'd only really reveal his name to Lady in the final episode where they both decide to fight on their own together. And it seemed like for a second that's where they were going. But instead, Lady betrays him, injects him to make him fall asleep, and he's frozen in cryo as both Force Edge and both sides of his amulet are captured by the American government. Even worse is what they did to Virgil. It appears he is a willing slave to Mundus, something that game Virgil would never allow himself to become. The entire reason Virgil wants power is because of the attack on his family, not to save innocent devils or anything like that. Plus, the horribly designed version of Nilo Angelo is just his devil trigger now. He doesn't do anything in the show, so there's not much I can say about him. He says something about an approaching storm after launching a Judgment Cut end, and that's it. If you really wanted the show to follow Lady, you could have done that. Just make Dante a literal walking plot device in her story, and it would still work. He helps her develop emotionally, and when the actual fights get too much for her, he shows up and styles on tougher demons. He's a literal deus ex machina in a human's story in the world of Devil May Cry. Dante is not supposed to be easy to take down. Plus, the possibility that his brother is alive, that he even has Virgil's half of the amulet, and that he has to take care of Force Edge would probably keep Dante on guard. Nobody touches Dante's family heirlooms unless he lets them. What's really disappointing is that there are moments when Game Dante shows up in the series. When people are falling from that plane, Dante starts off as this flanderized version of himself until he gets a flashback to his mom. Then he gets serious and he really starts saving people. The ability to get serious when he has to is something that I think defines Dante. Another bad decision that they made was to use DMC5's music. They even dropped Crimson Cloud somewhere in the show. The songs in the games are representations of the characters. Choosing the right music is important. They used Devil Trigger for Dante unlocking his Devil Trigger. They used Bury the Light basically every single time Virgil showed up. And before you call Bury the Light his theme song, it is an expression of his complete understanding of himself in 5. It's Virgil at his end state. It has no significance without understanding everything he did and everything that happened to him. They should have used his theme from 3 instead, given that that's around when this is supposed to take place. Even dropping a few chords from Bury the Light would have been more subtle than just blasting the chorus. The games don't really take place on Earth as we know it. America doesn't exist. Redgrave City is sort of Britain, Fortuna is sort of somewhere in Italy, and Malay Island is just Malay Island. Setting the show in New York was not a good idea, but it could have worked if it actually focused on the characters instead of other random OCs. DMC always had an analog feel to it. It was like Batman the Animated Series. It was a setting outside of time. Assigning a real time and place, and especially making it so high-tech, is just odd. The first episode already includes some stuff with American politics and stuff. It's a small piece of dialogue, but something so out of place that it immediately takes you out of the show. And then the final episode ends with America invading hell in some stupid American imperialism message. This is simply not Devil May Cry. If you think there's a lot more I haven't covered, you're right. I would have to complain about every single episode to cover it all. Not only is it objectively a bad show, it is an even worse adaptation that does not bother to understand its source material. The writers probably resent DMC for being a video game, or were unwilling to pick up on the nuances of the real story. Even by just watching the cutscenes for each game, you would understand how it looks and sounds, and the themes that it's trying to convey. We're going to have first-timers who want to get into the games asking where Darkcom is or what real-world city the game takes place in. These things don't exist at all in the games. Makai does not exist. It's the demon world, the underworld, or hell. And Dante and Virgil have been down there. They can breathe well enough to fight each other and enemy demons basically forever, as shown in 5's ending. Something else is that Makai is complete nonsense. Demons are evil, humans are good. And Makai itself just means demon realm in Japanese. They thought they were smart. The Netflix show may never even get as far as Castlevania did with how it made you invested in its characters. I enjoyed the Castlevania show on its own merits despite its possible inaccuracies. Here, there is nothing in 8 episodes that caught my interest, and that's a bad show. The infamous Dark Soul with Light line is funny, sure, but it's played completely straight.
I should have saved him.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
It's funny, but I think it still hits. The games are not ashamed of what they are. They're not afraid to tell their stories and to make you care for these characters. And that's why, once you get used to the cheesy lines and over-the-top action, behind it all, you do create a bond with all these characters. Having humanity means having empathy, caring for others. Humans have something that demons lack. If you discover that something, you aren't a devil, because devils never cry. We should be glad that the DMC games are so developed, though. There is more than enough there to where the games are their own wall. People who want the Netflix series in the games will not get it just because of how different the two are. There's no excuse of just NES pixels on a screen here. We're good. It should be noted, though, that every bad story in a franchise, canon or not, leaves a mark. You need to treat these stories with respect, or don't bother adapting them at all. Let me know what you guys thought of this show in the comments below. Type jackpot somewhere in your comment if you made it all the way to the end of the video. Let me know your thoughts, and see you all next time. Hope you enjoyed.